Bart narrowed his eyes. A souffle. How charming. Ralph, I want to see the basement. Now, as the Furley brothers exited, the apartment felt like it had been sucked of its air. Jack collapsed onto the sofa. He knows. I swear, he knows. He suspects, Cindy said, coming out from the shadows of the kitchen. But he can't prove anything. Unless what? Jack asked. Unless Austin comes back, Cindy suggested with a mischievous glint in her eye. No! Jack and Janet shouted in unison. Chapter 16. The Final Showdown. The afternoon was a tense waiting game. Ralph came back upstairs, looking like he had been put through a meat grinder. Bart wants to have dinner here. Tonight. He says he wants to see the real dynamic of the building management's flagship apartment. Dinner? Tonight? Jack stood up, his professional instincts kicking in. I don't have enough saffron. I don't have... Forget the saffron, Jack, Ralph pleaded. Just make something normal. And for heaven's sake, be gay. Be gayer than a chorus line at the Hollywood Bowl. The dinner was a masterclass in awkwardness. Jack served a simple roast chicken, but his nerves were frayed. He kept catching Bart, looking at the way Janet handed him the salt, or the way Jack's hand lingered near hers when he poured the wine. You seem very attentive to Miss Wood, Jack, Bart noted, his fork poised midair. For a man who is supposed to be uninterested. I'm attentive to everyone, Jack said, his voice a little too high. Ask Cindy. Cindy, am I attentive? Oh, very, Cindy chirped, almost knocking over her water. He noticed my new earrings immediately. Bart smiled, a thin, predatory expression. I've seen this before. Ralph, you are a fool. You've let a fox into the hen house. Mr. Tripper is no more gay than I am, and I'm going to make sure the board of directors hears about this breach of contract. The room went silent. Ralph looked at Jack with a desperate, pleading gaze. Jack looked at Janet. He saw the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing their home, their sanctuary. But he also saw the woman who had kissed him in the fog, the woman who had chosen his wildflowers over David Vance's expensive roses. He stood up, slowly, and took off his apron. You're right, Bart, Jack said, his voice calm and low. Jack, no, Ralph whimpered. I'm not gay, Jack continued, ignoring Ralph. I'm a man who fell in love with his roommate, and I'm a man who is tired of lying to people like you just to have a place to live. He turned to Janet. I love this apartment. I love these girls. But I love you more than I love a lease agreement. Janet stood up, her eyes shining. Chapter 17. The Twist of Fate. Bart Furley stood up, his face reddening with a mix of triumph and indignation. But Ralph Furley didn't move. He stood up, his chest puffed out, his bruised plum leisure suit actually looking a bit dignified for the first time. No, Ralph said. Bart blinked. Excuse me? I said no, Bart. You aren't evicting anyone. This is my building. You might be the serpent of the board, but I'm the manager. And I'm telling you that Jack Tripper is the best tenant I've ever had. He's my friend. You're choosing these deviants over your own brother? Bart hissed. I'm choosing my family over a bully, Ralph said, his voice firm. Now, get out of my building, Bart, before I call the police and tell them about that little tax discrepancy you mentioned in the basement. Bart frozen. He looked at Ralph, then at the three young people standing together. He realized he had lost. Without a word, he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was heavy. Then it was broken by a collective cheer. Ralph, you did it! Jack shouted, hoisting the landlord into the air. I did, didn't I? Ralph laughed, his ascot finally falling off. Wait, what tax discrepancy? I don't know, Jack admitted, setting him down. I just hoped you were bluffing. I was, Ralph winked. But don't tell Bart. As the night settled over Santa Monica, the three roommates and their landlord sat around the table, eating the remains of the roast chicken. There were no more disguises, no more Austin, no more eyeliner moles. Jack reached under the table and found Janet's hand. She squeezed back. So, Janet whispered, What now? Now, Jack said, looking at her with a warmth that could melt the Pacific fog. We live. For real. And as the disco lights of a nearby club reflected in the window, apartment 201 was no longer just a sanctuary. It was home. Chapter 18. The Third Wheel's Waltz. The week following the Great Furley Showdown was a blur of domestic bliss and awkward transitions. Jack and Janet were no longer just roommates. They were a couple, and the apartment, once a neutral zone of shared chores and playful banter, had become a minefield of romantic tension. Jack would accidentally brush against Janet's hand while passing the orange juice. Janet would linger in the kitchen just to watch Jack whisk eggs. It was sweet, it was nauseating, and for Cindy Snow, it was increasingly lonely. "Does anyone want to play Boggle?" Cindy asked one Tuesday evening, holding up the box like a peace offering. Jack and Janet were currently sharing the wicker love seat, their heads tilted together as they whispered about a new restaurant opening on the pier. They didn't even look up. "In a minute, Sin," Jack murmured. "Yeah, in a minute," Janet echoed, her hand resting on Jack's knee. Cindy sighed and put the game back on the shelf. She walked out onto the balcony, looking out at the Santa Monica night. She was happy for them, truly, but she felt like the last survivor on a sinking ship of platonic friendship. Even the ferns, now thriving under Janet's renewed care, seemed to be mocking her. "Rough night, kid." Cindy jumped. Ralph Furley was leaning over the railing of the balcony below, wearing a bathrobe that looked like it was made of discarded Christmas tinsel. "Oh, hi, Mr. Furley," Cindy said, leaning on the railing. "I'm just getting some air." "I hear ya," Ralph said, shaking his head. "The air in that apartment is pretty thick with, well, you know. Love is a beautiful thing, Cindy, but it can be a real pain in the neck for the neighbors." "I just feel like a third wheel," Cindy admitted. "Or a fifth wheel. I don't even know how many wheels I am anymore." "You're a spare tire, kid, and every car needs a spare," Ralph said, trying for profound and landing somewhere near confusing. "Tell you what, tomorrow night there's a disco contest at the community center. I need a partner who doesn't have the knees of a 90-year-old. You in?" Cindy looked at the glowing lights of the pier. She looked back at the love seat inside, where Jack was currently kissing the tip of Janet's nose. "You know what, Mr. Furley? I'm in." Chapter 19. The Pier's New Flavor. Jack Tripper had a new job. After turning down the cruise ship, Senor Rodriguez had been surprisingly gracious, mostly because he knew he couldn't find another chef who could handle a VIP crisis with as much flair and wine as Jack. "I'm working at the bistro on the pier," Jack announced, pinning his new chef's hat to the bulletin board. "It's local, the hours are better, and I don't have to learn how to tie a nautical knot." "And the pay?" Janet asked, leaning over the counter. "Enough to buy you the biggest bouquet of lilies in California," Jack said, pulling her into a hug. But the new job brought new complications. Larry Dallas, unaware of the official status of Jack and Janet's relationship, had decided it was his mission to find Jack a real woman, now that he didn't have to pretend for the landlord. "Tripper, pal, I've got her!" Larry burst into the apartment on Friday afternoon, wearing a leather jacket that smelled of stale cigarettes and ambition. "She's a dental hygienist from Encino. She likes cooking, she likes hiking, and she's got a smile that would make a shark jealous." Jack pulled away from Janet, his face reddening. "Larry, not now. What's the matter? Playing hard to get? Come on, we're going to the Beagle. Double date. I've got a stewardess for me and the hygienist for you." Janet crossed her arms. "Larry, Jack is busy tonight." "Busy? Doing what? Fluffing pillows?" Larry laughed, then froze as he saw the way Jack was holding Janet's hand. He looked at Jack, then at Janet, then back at Jack. "Wait, are you two?" "Yes, Larry," Jack said, his voice firm. "We are."